The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Jesus told his disciples a parable. Can a blind person guide a blind person? Will not both fall into a pit? No disciple is superior to the teacher, but when fully trained, every disciple will be like his teacher. Why do you notice the splinter in your brother's eye, but do not perceive the wooden beam in your own? How can you say to your brother, "Brother, let me remove that splinter in your eye," when you do not even notice the wooden beam in your own eye? You hypocrite! Remove the wooden beam from your eye first. Then you will see clearly to remove the splinter in your brother's eye. A good tree does not bear rotten fruit, nor does a rotten tree bear good fruit. For every tree is known by its own fruit. For people do not pick figs from thorn bushes, nor do they gather grapes from brambles. A good person, out of the store of goodness in his heart, produces good. But an evil person, out of a store of evil, produces evil. For from the fullness of the heart, the mouth speaks. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Well, these readings, especially the first reading in the Gospel, they really are probably, I think, the most convicting readings for us because we often find ourselves, I know I myself, I'll speak for myself, I often find myself needing to look at my heart much more often because of what comes out of my mouth so often. You don't hear it that much. Staff maybe a little, but not that much either. God hears it all the time. So, and we have to look at our speech often, because if we believe in the gospel, and especially that last line there, from the fullness of the heart, the mouth speaks. And so it causes us to really reflect upon how we're speaking, what we're saying, and what is in our hearts. Of course, as we approach Lent, we have a perfect opportunity to start reflecting upon that. So we're going to dive into this gospel passage, but then, overall, there's this this underlying, not overall, but underlying, there's this reflection upon our speech and then how we behave. The speech represents a lot about what is going on, in our minds and hearts. So that's important to reflect upon. And if people listen more often, then you listen to other people speak, you do really live these words of the Scripture, that you start to understand what a person is about, what their beliefs are, how they think. And so if we really pay attention to how people are speaking, then we start to learn a lot about them. A lot of times we are really more set on our own agendas, and when people speak, we don't really hear what they're saying. And so we miss an opportunity to really learn about where that person is coming from. And so when Jesus, it says that Jesus told his disciples a parable, but it appears to be more like a series of connecting proverbs, of which he begins with the mention of blindness. So right away, he speaks about blindness. He says, can a blind person guide a blind person? Will not both fall into a pit? So immediately, blindness then, it naturally calls to mind physical sight. But when Jesus refers to teaching and training, it is a metaphorical reference to knowledge and understanding. And so it's intellectual sight. As he states, no disciple is superior to the teacher, but when fully trained, every disciple will be like his teacher. So what Jesus does is he brings physical sight and intellectual sight or understanding together with the famous, why do you notice the splinter in your brother's eye, but do not perceive the wooden beam in your own? And so splinter is the physical sight, and then the wooden beam would be the intellectual sight. Okay, but it's also used as intellectual sight in both cases. But that's what the reference is there, is that we miss our own flaws before we go to correct others. And so furthermore, if we understand a guide as a reference to a teacher, then we add this to physical sight, understanding that training or teaching, we get a reference to teachers and teaching others. He's training his disciples. You have to be better teachers. You have to be aware of your own flaws if you're going to teach others. And so with the word guide as a reference to teacher, both of the parables refer to teachers, some with flawed vision and some with clear vision, where some teachers teach good and others teach badly. Other teachers teach badly, so to speak. And so good teachers, they live what they teach and are considered to be true teachers, while bad teachers who do not live what they teach, they are called hypocrites. And so in the honor and shame culture of the Mediterranean context of which Jesus lived, we have to recall that creating and projecting character appearances was the norm. That is, you just had to appear to be good, not actually be good to gain honor. Ironically, I was at a friend's, my family's wedding. I was at a family's wedding last night, and we were just talking about this, about how people are mostly not who they are at home as they are at work. I go, yeah, it's everybody. I mean, we all have to present a certain character, and this is what we call persona, right? The tension between who people expect us to be and who we want to be. And every context dictates to us, how we're supposed to present ourselves. And so we want them to be the same, because if it's virtuous all the time, then it's okay. But it's not all the time, so we have to be aware of that. So it's interesting that we have a similar kind of thing going on in our culture today. You just had to appear to be good, not actually be good in order to gain honor in that context. So teachers were notorious for putting on the best front or best mask, or being the best stage actor, which is what the word hypocrite translates from. It's a translation of the word hypocrite, stage actor. In addition, the Greek word for hypocrite takes on the added meaning of deceiver or pretender. And we don't really intend to deceive or pretend, not often, all right? But there are people who do. And of course, in this context, this is what Jesus is trying to get them to understand. So therefore, these hypocrites, these stage actors that Jesus is referring to, they are misguided teachers and leaders that he is warning his disciples against, and also warning them not to imitate. Don't do what they do. Don't be a pretender. Don't be a deceiver. Okay? But be aware of your speech and let it be honest. So in reference to the Sermon on the Plain, still in that context from 3 weeks ago, the Beatitudes, Jesus exhorted his listeners to candid self-examination and authentic efforts to improve the self before attempting to help others improve themselves. And so without candid self-examination, all right, and love and compassion for enemies, one will end up a bad teacher or leader, blind, unreliable, and untrustworthy, a deceiver, an actor, and a hypocrite. So in other words, be good, authentic teachers, not fake ones like the ones common in their culture at the time, and unfortunately, sometimes in some places, our culture of today. I don't always want to degrade politicians, but, there are a lot of people in our world today who do put up deceptive fronts. And that's why we want to pay attention to their speech, too. We want to listen to what they have to say. We have to be careful about conflicting opinions. Don't let our conflicting opinions suddenly stop us from listening. Hear something of what the other person has to say. All right? One, it treats a person with dignity. And secondly, there might actually be something that is worth talking about in there. But thirdly, it represents the person of where they're coming from. And we learn a lot that way. And it makes us better teachers and leaders in the long run. So a teacher cannot teach, nor can a leader lead if he or she is judging or condemning of others. Remember, love your enemies and do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. That's the greater context of what this is in. So as disciples commissioned with spreading the good news, we cannot teach or lead if we have a beam in our own eye, That is, if we lack compassion for our enemies, or if we have a hypocritical or judgmental disposition in our thinking. And if we do, then we must remove the wooden beam from our eye first, as Jesus tells us, and then we will see clearly to remove the splinter in our brother's eye. We will be able to teach well, that is, evangelize by the example of our lives. So we are not to pass judgment on others because only God knows the inner conscience of a person, but rather we are to look to ourselves instead. We're constantly looking at ourselves in that sense, but always looking to Jesus, right? We don't want to stay too far. Well, it's a perfect balance, right? We want to get the proper balance. We're always looking at Jesus as if he's the mirror. We're looking at a mirror when we look at Jesus, and we hope to see what our reflection of ourselves is. And so we're always trying, this is of course the way we have the season of Lent every year, so that we can allow ourselves this candid self-examination. So he goes on, to distinguish a good teacher from a bad teacher, Jesus refers to good trees that produced good fruit and bad trees that produce rotten fruit. And we hear that also referenced with trees and fruit in the first reading. All fruit trees have leaves or foliage. It's nothing new, right? All fruit trees have leaves or foliage, which are the words of the teachers. All teachers speak words, but not all teachers bear the same fruit. Just as not all teachers have good deeds. The fruits are the deeds of the teachers. Hence, the good teachers, or good leaders and guides, are known by their good deeds, and the bad or fake teachers are known by their bad deeds. Okay, this is what our culture uses to judge, if you will, or evaluate politicians. We're supposed to, anyway, listen to what the politician says, then they try to pay attention to what they do in their lives. Are they consistent? You look at priests the same way. Where do I want to go to church? What does this priest say, and then how does he act? Is that someone who's consistent in what they're teaching? So candid self-examination leads to developing love of enemies, compassion for those who mistreat us, and understanding of those who hurt us, precisely because a heart full of divine love is formed through self-examination. How do we become better lovers? Self-examination. Self-examination, that painful process. A good teacher, leader, or person who has a store of goodness in their heart produces good deeds. But an evil teacher, leader, or person with a store of evil in their heart produces evil deeds. The fruits should match the leaves in the metaphor. The fruits should match the leaves as the actions should match the words. Okay, a person's actions and behavior should be consistent with their speech. Then you will know you have a good leader, teacher, guide, and person to follow. There is no lack of people on earth who are only pretty foliage or large, shiny, glossy leaves, whom upon a closer look produce only evil fruit. Meanwhile, many souls are looking to true disciples of Jesus Christ. There's a lot of people looking for someone to help them, to guide them. Remember, it's about guiding others to Jesus Christ. He started that way. But can a blind person guide a blind person? Will not both fall into a pit? We are the disciples of Jesus Christ. We're the ones, all Christians are called to lead others to Jesus Christ. And so there's many who need to satisfy these people's hunger for God and for truth. It's not just the priest's job. It's everybody's job who's Christian. In that sense, it's everybody's calling. The Beatitudes, the love of enemies, and continual honest self-examination add up to disciples, teachers, and leaders formed in love, leading souls to God and satisfying their hunger through teaching the truth of Jesus Christ. So again, we look at this gospel, we hear these words, and like I say, it's probably one of the most convicting gospels for me anyway, because I say a lot of things. I say a lot of things that I'm not really proud of all the time. All right, and I don't say things the way I should. And we all have different family of origin issues that kind of cause those things that happen that way. But one of the good things about me is that I'm willing to apologize. And so then that's another good help for myself here. And so that's good for me to rely on. So if I mess up, make sure I go apologize too. And humble pie becomes one of my favorite desserts, so to speak, right? You know, so in essence, then, have I looked at myself lately? If I haven't looked at myself lately and how I speak and what that means in my heart, I'm going to have a good season of Lent just ahead of me to do that. Have I looked at myself lately, or have I been too busy looking at others? Others' actions, they really can become a distraction from our own self-improvement.